All right. Perek Yud Beis, I want to do a few things today. Perek Yud Beis, Pasuk Chaf, page 104. Ki Archiv, page 1004. Capital page. Okay. Ki Archiv Hashem Elokecha es gevulcha kasher diber loch. When Hashem extends your borders, your property is broadened. Ve'amarta ochla basar, and you decide you want to eat meat. Ki sa'ava nafshecha lechol basar, you have a desire to eat meat. So b'chol avas nafshecha tochal basar, so go right ahead and eat meat. So here the Torah is telling you that you have a law, you have a right to go eat meat. And it doesn't, not meat that has to be brought up to the Beis HaMikdash. Excuse me 1 second. Doesn't have to be brought up to the Beis HaMikdash. It's good enough. You could eat meat. You could eat meat. For any purpose that you want. You're allowed to eat meat if you have a desire to eat meat. Then the next pasuk says, "Ki yirchak mimcha mokom asher yivchar Hashem Elokecha lasum et shemo sham." In when you are distant from the place, you're distant from the place. You don't have to go up and bring offerings, and therefore you're allowed to what do you call it? You're allowed you can't bring a korban shlomim every day. Rashi says, so you're allowed to eat meat. That's what the Torah says. You're allowed to eat meat. Now, first of all, we see right off the bat that there's absolutely nothing wrong with eating meat. We've spoken about this. Nothing wrong with eating meat, and if a person eats meat. Now, the problem here is, where does this come from? Because obviously there is an underlying over here. There's something that's okay but not okay. And the underlying issue is Ki Archiv Hashem Elokecha Gulacha. This is a byproduct of prosperity. You prosperous, and when a person prospers, when a person becomes wealthier, a person becomes rich, so all of a sudden your desires increase, which is always a tricky line to draw between what you need and what you want, what's appropriate, what's excessive. So if a person is wealthy, you're allowed to live, you're allowed to enjoy your money, but there's a difference between enjoying your money and flaunting your money. Anything that is a thought as a result of flaunting, meaning that you're doing it because you want others to see, that's already no good. That's already no good. As soon as you want to build a house and you want to build a bigger house just so people see how big your house is, or drive a certain car so people see how big the car, make a certain type of chasna just so people will see how much you've got, that's already you've crossed the line. At your level and your relative to your community, you don't have to live. If everybody in your community is living at a certain reasonable standard, you don't have to go below that standard. That's not required. But to go above that standard, you have to think twice, because what kind of pressure are you going to put? People respond to pressure from other people. That's the fact. And by you going and doing something and upgrading something, so the guy in the next house, his wife is now going to be looking out the window. How come these guys upgraded and we didn't put pressure on our husband? And then there's shalom bayis issues, and you could be responsible for that. You're responsible for the friction in their marriage, because you decided that you want to go and make a good impression, not a good impression. You want to make an impression on people. So the Torah says that it's a result of prosperity. Now, here the Mefarshim say that you cross a line, and the line is where you say, Ve'amarta ochla basar. And certain things, you don't have to say it. I want to eat meat. I want to eat meat. You've lost any, and most people would be embarrassed. I've been in my neighborhood, I've been with, it's a neighborhood that's filled with Talmidei Chachamim, B'nai Torah. I don't remember in 40 years I've been living there, any of them ever discussing what they ate for supper the night before. Sometimes you sit down at a table, yeah, oh man, we went out last night. Wow, it was unbelievable. So you get $20, all you can eat. Yeah, the wings were, and the whole thing becomes a discussion. There's eat it. You want to eat it, eat it. I heard once about one of the Gedolim, his wife, when she would call people to supper. She called the family, she said, okay, who needs to eat? She didn't say who wants to eat. Who do you want to eat? What do you want to eat? Say, who needs to eat? You need to eat, so you eat. But I can go make an issue out of it. Like, become a whole, what do you call it? Okay, so we have to know, better to talk about food than talk about Shonara, that's for sure. And there are people who talk about restaurants and talk about this and they talk about that. But the Torah is telling you, the prosperity caused you to lose a certain sense I wouldn't even call it shame, a certain refinement. Isn't that right? Did you ever see Gedolim sitting at a table talking about, wow, what did you have? What did you have? I can imagine, what do you call it? Rav Shach and the Stipler talking about, what did you have last night? It can't even, it doesn't even cross, Rav Moshe Feinstein talking about, I put down a steak last night. It doesn't even, it's beyond ridiculous. So Torah says, there's a certain sense of shame over here. I'm not telling you, by the way, in my house we say, who wants to eat supper? I say, who needs to eat supper? If I was at that Madrega, I would. I'm not at that Madrega. You should know, Rav Gifter Zatzal, later, they once asked him, I think it was when he first grew payas, or it was before he grew payas. I don't remember which one it was, but they either asked him why he doesn't have payas, or at a certain point they asked him, why are you growing payas now? He said, because up until now I wasn't at that level. That's what Rav Gifter said. I mean, I don't know what level you have to be on to grow payas, and I'm not telling you to grow payas. He knows that I don't have payas. But he's saying, if you're doing it, do it for yourself. Do it because you feel this is something I should or shouldn't be doing. Not because of somebody else and what the peer pressure is. The same thing when it comes to chumras. People take on stringencies because they think everybody else is taking on. You take on a chumrah. You know the terminology. If you look at the Mishnah Berurah, sometimes the Mishnah Berurah will use an expression, Baal Nefesh Yachmir. A Baal Nefesh, somebody with a nefesh should be machmir over here. Why does he say that? Why doesn't it say Yarei Shemayim Yachmir or a Tzaddik Yachmir? Right? He doesn't say. He says Baal Nefesh Yachmir. Interesting terminology. Why? So I heard once from Rabbi Moshe. I didn't hear it from him. I heard B'Shem Rabbi Moshe Shapiro Zatzal. He said Baal Nefesh means it's coming from your own nefesh. I feel that at my level, whatever level I'm at, this is what I should or shouldn't be doing. I should be stringent over here. If you're not going to carry on Shabbos, even with a very good Eruv, if it's not a good Eruv, you certainly shouldn't carry. But sometimes there's a very good Eruv that's supervised, and there is a concept of somebody being machmir, not carrying even in an excellent, perfect 100% Eruv. There is such a concept. Are you doing it because of somebody else, or are you doing it for yourself? Myself, I don't feel that I want to inconvenience myself. Somebody else says, I'm just not comfortable carrying it there. Good, okay, that's good enough. Same thing with hechsherim. Certain hechsherim, people eat certain hechsherim, they won't eat other hechsherim. There are a lot of excellent hechsherim, and it has to do with what the standard of the hechsher is. And a person says, I'm just not comfortable eating that hechsher. I'm more comfortable paying more and eating a higher standard hechsher. The other hechsher is kosher. You're right, I'm just not comfortable with it. And I think here the other day, we bought falafel. We had falafel for the first time in ages. I don't eat it that often. I brought home some falafel for myself and my wife. So when I buy falafel, I told my kids, when you eat falafel, get 2 half falafels. Don't get a whole falafel. Get 2 half falafels. Why? Because when you're eating a whole falafel, you look like a trucker. You got half the trina ends up on your pants. There's something undignified about it. You eat 2 half falafels, you eat 2 half sandwiches. There are other people who won't even eat a half, won't even hold a sandwich. I don't believe Rabbi Moshe Feinstein ever ate a sandwich. I believe Rabbi Moshe Feinstein ever ate a sandwich. He never even a half sandwich. I don't believe he ate a sandwich. If he had a roll, Rabbi Moshe used to eat every morning the same thing. He had a roll, a soft-boiled egg, and a cup of coffee. That was his breakfast. And without it being there, he did not pick up the roll. I have no doubt he did not pick up the roll. He broke a piece of bread off the roll and put it in his mouth. I knew a guy who ate pizza with a knife. That's almost like an Isser D'Oraisa, eating pizza with a knife, right? He said that I can't pick up a slice of pizza, but when I buy pizza for the kids, so normally you slice it into 8, right? I always slice it at least into 16. You get to eat just as much. 2 half falafels is the same as 1 falafel. You get to eat just as much. It's not a question of money. You'll eat just as much, but just eat it with a little more derech eretz. And some people, I'm just not comfortable. So my wife asked me if I like laufas. What is it called, a laufa? The falafel, the laufa, when you wrap it around, looks like. I said, yeah, I like a laufa as much as the next guy. The problem is that it looks like you're chowing down on a building. And I like it a lot better than I like a regular pita, but there's something, and listen, I'm not machmir, and I'm not, I'm not one of the 36 of the generation, but I'm not comfortable, eat a lot. I think at this point, when I was a teenager, I wouldn't have had a second thought, I would have eaten two at once. But so sometimes it's just, are you comfortable with it? You're not comfortable with it. See, you get it just as much. So cut it in half, eat it with derech eretz. Why does it hurt you? So the guys here, you told me years ago, they have these, $20 all you can eat. So the guys years ago, I'm from Chicago, I'm an out-of-towner. You're also an out-of-towner. Don't you love that when they call us out-of-towners? Yeah, they go, the New Yorkers, we're all out-of-towners. And they still convinced that in Chicago we have outhouses and no running water because we're out-of-towners. It's just a little, we live in shacks. So the guys from New York were telling me about this restaurant, Dougie's. You ever been to Dougie's? He said, yeah. Oh yeah, they got a few branches. So Dougie's used to have, at the time, it was $20 all you can eat. Now $20 you can't even get a couple of French fries, but in the old days it was $20 all you could eat. But they took the sale off during Bein Hazmanim when the yeshiva guys were back. Because yeshiva guys will eat out of house and home. So they took it off. During the Zman, who walks in a family, the wife has, a piece of chicken with a big salad and a soup, $20 all you can eat. The yeshiva guys come in, they don't even wait for the beast to die. They take no prisoners. So the guys were telling me they tell me three things about the place. Now I like to eat as much as I could go for a burger and a steak as much as that. They told me there's something called a monster burger. He said, say that loud so everybody hears your shmuel. Yeah, that put me off right away. I'm not a monster. I got mitos to work on, but I'm not a monster. I'm not going to go eat a monster burger. I can just imagine what it looks like. I see the commercial for the double burgers at McDonald's. They or sometimes even the kosher establishments. They have this thing with 2 burgers on it and salad and the whole thing. And then you got to figure out how to negotiate. Is that really where you're holding? It could be you are, could be you're not. Could be a guy says, listen, let me first eat kosher food, then I'll worry about how I eat the kosher food. Okay, depends what each person is holding. So they told me about a monster burger. Then they told me you could get a rack of ribs. I could go for a rack of ribs, but they told me the way you're served it is they have a booth, and then they give you a bib. Yes, I wore a bib at one point in my life, but it's been a few years since bib time. If I need a bib, something's wrong. Something here is not right. And then you hold this whole rack of ribs, and they put you in a booth. And they told me that, by the way, there's a plastic tablecloth, and they give you crayons, and you get to color on the tablecloth till they bring your order. I used to color with crayons. Yeah, but that was around the time I was wearing a bib. So you understand? At a certain point, I think I could expect a little more from myself. That's all, and that's a gauge. Often when you're doing something, I don't know if this is the right thing to do, and you could test. You could trust your conscience just a little bit. You could trust your conscience. Then they told me when you leave, they give you a tray, and whatever you pack in the tray, you get to take. So one of the guys told me what he did. He said these guys would be yeshiva guys. They would pack these trays, and bring a hydraulic compressor to get there. Okay, I don't. You got to have your fun. And for Jews, there isn't much fun other than food. That's really what it boils down to. At the end of the day, you're going to end up eating. You're going to end up eating. But that's what the Torah is telling you. There's a certain sense of shame that has to be maintained, not just by the food, by everything. Okay. What happens is it leads. See, with prosperity, when I was growing up, I don't know what kind of world you guys grew up in. Nowadays, it's very common at a wedding, when you're calculating the cost of the wedding, there's something called flop. Flowers, liquor, orchestra, and what? Photographer. Flop. They're the Rashi Tevis. Flop. I think it's flop is because that's what happens to the father of the bride who pays and he flops financially. But there's flop. Liquor, when I was growing up, there was a liquor. We drank. A couple old guys in shul on Shabbos, they had a schnapps, a cheap liquor. They'd make it kiddush, schnapps and a kichel. That was it. There was no drinking culture. There was no bar at a chasna. There was never a bar. You never went into a bar. Nowadays, you go into a chassid, they got bars that would put, what do you call it, to shame? They would put bars in college campuses to shame. And guys hit the bar and they hit the drinks. It was never, take a chon, Sharon. It was never like that when we were growing up. When in my house, when I said, Dad, we got a drinking problem, that meant that Pepsi wasn't on sale that week. You couldn't get you could get an 8-pack of Pepsi for $1.09. It was back up to $1.29. That was a drinking problem. No one drank. Who drank? So what happens is, why is there so much nowadays? Look at the problems that we have in our communities. There's gambling, there's drinking, there are kiddish clubs. Where did all this come from? It comes from prosperity. Why didn't Jews drink? Because you didn't have money to spend on drink. Jews were always trying to make a living. You're trying to make a parnasa, put food on the table. But once you've got excess, now what are you going to do with the money? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave a bracha. If you use it properly, you're going to channel it into tzedakah and into helping the community and so on and so forth. And spending on your kids' day school tuitions. If you have excess, then you're looking for something to do. Then it leads to all the negative things. That's what the Torah is saying. Okay. Why does this happen? The hint happens because of the next pasuk. Ki yirchak mimcha hamakom. Now the plain meaning is because you're distanced physically from Yerushalayim, so you're not going to bring up korban shlomim. But the Mefarshim say Ki yirchak mimcha hamakom. Who's the makom? The makom is Hashem. Hamakom, a person says when they leave a house of mourning, Hamakom yenachem aschem. That Hashem should bring a what do you call it? Hashem should bring a comfort. So the Mefarshim say, you know where all this comes from? Ki yirchak mimcha hamakom. You became distanced from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Once a person's distanced from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then he lets his baser instincts take over, and therefore he gets involved in all this type of behavior. I've seen. They had in pre-war Europe, Rav Shach Zatzal said the biggest funeral among the Goyim in pre-war Europe, before World War II, Rav Shach said there was a contest who could eat the most loaves of bread. And there was a Goy who ate 50 loaves of bread. And then he died of the resultant stomach issues, and his funeral was the biggest levaya, the biggest funeral that Rav Shach saw the Goyim made. He was the national hero because he ate these. There's this guy who eats 50, this hot dog eating champion who's got something wrong with his stomach. He's even a skinny guy, but he can knock down food almost without end, without limit. Listen, we should eat and we should enjoy it and we should be healthy, but it's got to be with a little sense of shame. That's the idea. Okay. Then it says like this. Now we're going to go on to the blood. Pasuk Chaf Beis. Ach ka'asher ye'ochel es hatzi ve'es ha'ayel kein tochlenu hatome ve'hatov or yochlenu yachdav. Just as one eats a deer or a ayel, or how's he translated?
Deer and a heart.
A deer and a heart. What's a heart exactly? Also some type of venison. Why does the Torah say you should eat meat just like you eat deer, and just like you eat deer and you eat venison? Have any of you ever eaten deer, by the way? Any of you ever had venison, deer? How many of you had it? That's exactly why. You've had it? Is it good?
Yeah.
That's why the Torah says to eat like you eat deer, because you haven't had it. In other words, the Torah is saying, it's not common. It's not common. Question. Yitzchak, when he wanted to give the brachas, he sends Esav out hunting. What did Rivka do as a replacement? What's that? She cooked. She took Yaakov. She said, go get a couple of sheep. Go get a couple of what he calls, check them, and I'll make them for your father. I don't know, Yitzchak had property. Why did he send Esav out to the field to get something for him? Go get me some venison. Why did he send them out for venison? Why did he just go say, hey, Esav, go to the corral, bring me a couple of sheep, a couple of rams, a couple of calves, and make it like that? Why did Yitzchak send them out? It's a good question, isn't it? Why do you have to send Esav out? What? Oh, it could be that was something, the most special thing, even though Rashi says that Rivka made the sheep and they tasted the goat. What did she make? Gidaya Easy? What did she make? Goats for Yitzchak? What did she make? Goats. And Rashi says over there they have the same taste. And Yitzchak was blind and he wasn't the guy who was into meat. And he wasn't like, oh yeah, venison, I've been waiting for this. Why is Yitzchak, why did he send them out? So the Mepharshim say, because Yitzchak was concerned, meat it could be habit forming. You get into it, you're into meat, it's like anything else. And Yitzchak was concerned, I don't want this to turn into a habit. I'm going to have something special now, like you say, but I don't want it to turn into a habit. You know what, if I take it from the corral, then tomorrow I'll take from the corral also. This way, I could do something that is not so accessible, and that's what the Torah is alluding to. But the Torah says, like you eat deer, and like you eat heart, and like you eat deer. It's perfectly acceptable, but it's not as easily accessible, and therefore you got to be careful. It won't become habit forming. And this is something a person always has to be careful for. Is you have to know your personality very well. You have to know who you are very well. So there are certain people who, you take it or leave it. You take it or leave it. There are other people who have what you would call an extreme personality. An extreme personality means that if you do it, you're going to do it all the time, and you know you're going to do it all the time. And so I know, for example, I don't think I ever ate one chocolate bar in my life. If I eat one, no, it doesn't mean I never ate a chocolate bar. I said I never ate one chocolate bar, or I rarely ate one chocolate bar. If I was going to eat one, there was going to be two. And I never ate one slice of pizza. If it was going to be one, it was going to be 3 or 4. There was going to be one. That doesn't do it for me. I got to tease myself. I'd rather not eat it at all than limit it. That's an extreme personality. It's not a good or a bad. It's a fact. And the same thing goes for a lot of other things. Never had one piece of cake. Who eats one piece of cake? We conquer the cake. I don't eat a cake. So some people, they'll have one piece of cake. No, that's enough. They have half a chocolate bar. How can you be friends with a person like that? They have half a chocolate bar. Or they say Rav Scheinberg Zatzal, who had almost zero attachment to anything in the physical world. Once in a while, he would have a chocolate bar. And his Talmidim were like, what? Yeah, it's so out of character for Rav Scheinberg. And the way he ate the chocolate bar is he'd break it into little pieces, and he'd eat a piece. And a few minutes later, he would eat another piece. So they said to him, what's going on? He said, the nature of people, when you eat chocolate, very few people eat it slowly. When you eat chocolate, you eat and you go. He said it's an exercise in self-control. That after he has one piece, then he's going to force himself to wait before he has the second piece. It's an exercise in self-control. It's an interesting exercise. I do that with entire bars. Okay? I'll have one bar and then I'll wait a little bit before you have the second bar. See, me and Rav Scheinberg. You understand? So you have to know who you are. That's why I don't have a phone. I've never had a phone, any sort of cell phone at all. I never owned one. I don't own one. I've never had not a smartphone, any phone whatsoever.
How do you get around?
How do I get around?
Yeah.
How do I get around? I mean, I don't know that people get around on their phone unless you've got a magical flying phone, unless now smartphones can help you fly. How do I get around? I use my feet. That's how I get around. Or a car, once in a while a bus, or a train, or a plane. I don't get around on the phone. What you're asking, you know what people have responded to me when I've said I don't have a phone? I've had this response on a number of occasions. People have said to me, so what do you do? I'm talking bizeh haloshem. People say, so what do you do? I said, 1 second, let's clarify something here, guys. I didn't say that I have an oxygen breathing shortage. I said I don't have a phone. So what do you do? What I do is very simple. I do what I've always done. What if somebody needs you? So they call my house, and if I'm not home, they leave a message. And I come home and I look at the messages. And if it's someone who wants to give me money, I call them back. And if it's somebody who wants my money, I don't call them back. What's so difficult to understand over here? And I said, what if your wife needs to get a hold of you in an emergency? What did they do before cell phones? You called the office, and you called the workplace, and you left a message. And then somebody came in and called your husband. My wife only ever needed me twice anyway, both because there was a mouse in the house. So who needs that message? See, understand, the only time I've regretted not having a phone is when a kid has come up to me and asked me if it could use a phone. Do I have a phone they can use? This must have happened to me 20 times. Kids on the street said to me, oh, can I borrow your phone? I'm sorry, kid, I don't have one. I don't know if he thinks I'm lying or if he thinks, why didn't I get a phone? I remember guys in Shear once said to me, Rabbi, I think at the time Orange, was there a company Orange once? They said Orange has a special on the phones you could get. I said, Baruch Hashem, I can afford one. It's not a question of affording it. I can't afford to get involved with it. As soon as those phones came out, I took one look at it and I said, if I get one, I'm going to be on it all the time. It's going to dominate my life. Okay, I have no control over it. And this is one of the things that parents struggle with. And parents struggle with it, the whole society is struggling with it. I'm not even talking about smartphones. I'm talking about people walking around with it's attached. Okay, you have to know who you are. Some people have the ability to just put it on the shelf. They don't. I spoke to a woman once. She told me I was in a certain city. This woman, I was staying at their house. She said, I'm known as the meanest mom in town. And they had a rule in the house, as soon as their kids came home, the phones are on the shelf until all the homework is done. Okay, you have to have a lot of willpower for that. You have to be tough enough to do that. But that's what the Torah is talking about. The Torah is talking about, over here, a certain level of self-control. Okay, take a look at Pasuk Yud Gimel. And then we're going to see the Rashi here. So Rashi says, Rak chazak levilti achol hadam. Be strong, not to eat the blood. Ki adam hu hanafesh. The blood is the soul. V'lo sochal hanefesh im habasar. You don't eat the soul with the meat. That means that it's usher for us to eat blood. The plain idea is the essence, the life essence is in the blood. And you know that even a human being, anytime somebody's not feeling well, first thing is a blood test. You see everything in the blood. Everything. It's one of the niflos sabore. It's a remarkable thing that Hashem did. Person doesn't feel well, doctor sends for a blood test and they test for everything. Sometimes they'll give you a list of things they're testing for. You have 25 things they're testing for on the blood. And you see everything in the blood. The blood is the essence. So to eat an animal, to eat the blood, at a basic level, there's a certain insensitivity, a certain crudeness that we're eating the essence of the animal. It's enough we eat the meat, but not the blood. The blood is something that we are completely distanced from. Take a look at Rashi. It's the right column, 5 lines from the bottom. Rak chazak levilti achol hadam. Mima shenemar chazak, strengthen yourself not to eat the blood. I mean, guys, honestly, any of you had a temptation recently to eat blood? Somebody hold me back. If you had to take, is it like Moshe? Come on, Moshe, back off. You know, they say, are you really? It does not look like the most appetizing thing in the world. I had a friend who told me he was a shochet. He said he was working in the slaughterhouse, and they had one of the non-Jews in the slaughterhouse, and they shechted the behema. And the guy, the non-Jew, just took his cup and he filled it up right at the neck, and he just knocked it down. And that's exactly what our reaction was like. Oh, oof. I mean, don't knock it till you tried it. It's probably got vitamins, minerals. Who knows? In the north of England, they have something called black pudding. You know what black pudding is? You know, you know what it is? It's congealed blood. I mean, obviously they treat it, they do something with it, they spice it up. Otherwise, people wouldn't eat it if it didn't taste good. But they make it like we have a salami loaf. They make a loaf of black pudding. And you cut up a couple of slices and you put it on bread and you have a black pudding sandwich. You never heard of that? Black pudding. Hey, some black pudding, mate. And you have a couple of black pudding sandwiches with a couple of pints of beer. Then you go off to the soccer match and trample people. You wonder why. I wonder, what got them all pumped up over there? So the Torah says, Rak chazak levilti achodam. Rashi says, Mima shenemar chazak, from the fact that it says you got to be vigilant, you got to be strong. Atolomed shayushtufim bedam laochlo. They were involved very heavily in blood consumption. Lefichach tzarich lomar chazak. You have to say, you only tell somebody, listen, you gotta activate some willpower here not to eat blood. I mean, why? Yeah, apparently they did. We'll see why in a second. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Rabbi Shimon ben Azai, Omer, some say it's Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. No, they weren't immersed in blood. Loba kosuv ala zircho la. Torah is warning you and teaching you ad kama tatzorich lischazek b'mitzvahs. How much you have to strengthen yourself in mitzvahs. Im hadam, if blood, shehu kali shamer menu. It's easy to get to guard yourself from blood. She'eino damisavalo. Nobody has desire for blood. Hutzrach lechazkecha be'asor. So the Torah needs to strengthen the warning for blood. Kal v'chom l'shar mitzvahs. All the more so to other mitzvahs where there is a temptation. What's the Torah? What's Rashi saying? The plain meaning is Rashi is just saying, look, really, according to the first opinion, they're immersed in blood. We'll get to that in a second. But according to the second opinion, really, I don't need to tell you that term, use that terminology for blood. So why am I using that terminology? Torah is teaching you if that's a terminology we use by blood, so all the more so that's the terminology. When it comes to stuff we are interested in, so certainly you have to strengthen ourselves. Okay. I think there's a psychological idea here. This is my own personal idea. That as soon as something is said, we're told no, so then there's automatically a temptation. As soon as I say you can't, then automatically there's a temptation, at least a curiosity. And there's a pasuk in Mishnah that says, "Ma'im genuvim im taku." The stolen waters are sweet. Stolen waters are sweet. And anything that you're not so when you'll find, I'm sure that your mother, if she ever said to you, she ever baked a pie and told you not to take any of the cake or pie, now there's even a greater temptation. Once she says you can have it, forget it. Once it's stolen, the stolen waters are sweet. It's forbidden. It's off limit. I told you the best piece of chicken, best chicken I ever had in my life. Bar none. Better than anything my wife ever made, better than anything my mother ever made, by far. The best piece of chicken I ever had was when I was 15 years old at sleepaway camp. And me and my friend Milty used to go on Friday when they were making the chicken for Shabbos, and the cook said nobody's allowed to have any, and we would sneak in and grab a couple of pieces, then hide behind there was a white van out there. We'd hide behind this white van and eat the chicken. Nothing nothing was as delectable as that stolen chicken. And then when it was available on Shabbos, the stuff was almost inedible. But on Erev Shabbos, that stuff was delectable. Better than anything I've ever put. Why? Because stolen waters are sweet. How come when you ate in class, Aaron, when you ate potato chips in class, or corn chips, Shmuel, how come there was nothing quite nothing as exquisite? You know, the technique, you kind of put it in your mouth, give a couple of chews till the teacher starts looking at you. The room is smelling like garlic and grill and everything else from the corn chips or whatever. But it was right. Nothing tasted ever better. You couldn't wait for class to end to get out there and finish the whole bag. And then what happened? Class ended and you went out with it. It just didn't taste the same. Why not? Because the stolen waters are sweet. There was nothing as delicious in class. Absolutely delicious. Like that. And it was always something crunchy too. You're crunching away over, the teacher's looking around, who did it? I had a guy who used to come into geometry class. This guy worked in the kitchen. He helped for supper in the yeshiva. He would come into the geometry class and he would knock off 4 hamburger sandwiches with onions. The place smelled like a grill. And the guy's just eating his sandwich, and the teacher would be looking around, hey, it smells like a barn in here. He's looking around, and again, this guy's knocking off 4 hamburger sandwiches for supper. Because he worked in the kitchen, he would chop them up and bring them into the room. That's because the stolen waters are sweet. So first of all, the Torah is telling you, you know why you may be tempted to eat blood? Because the Torah says no. Okay. According to the first opinion of Rashi, they were immersed in blood. Why would they be immersed in blood? What was the whole point? And why is the Torah, we find in Vayikra also, in Achremos or Kedoshim, that the Torah warns vehemently against eating blood. And you have to spill out the blood. You have to when you shech the animal, you have to cover the blood. The answer is, blood was used. Remember, we're talking about in a time and in a society where there was a very strong connection to idol worship and that sort of thing. The Torah is saying, in those days, in order to make contact with what's called the kochos hatuma, call it the forces of evil, the spiritual evil forces, the Death Eaters, the way one made contact in those days is you accessed it somehow by consuming blood. That's why in all the non-Jewish literature and all the stories that you read about, there's always, the weird, the guy, the devil worship, it involves eating blood, that sort of thing. It's all in the Torah. It all comes from the Torah. So the Torah says you have to strengthen yourself because that's what he means. They weren't immersed in blood because they enjoyed eating it. If they were immersed in it, it was because that was part of the ritual in order to make contact with the occult. Therefore, they consume blood. And therefore, the Torah says you have to strengthen yourself and not eat the blood. Okay. I want, there's one last point that I wanted to get to today. Do you have 2 minutes? You have 2 minutes. It's a vital point. It's a vital point. It's the last point. It's a vital point. So I wanted to tell you about yesterday. Turn all the way to Perek Yud Gimel. Turn all the way to Perek Yud Gimel. And here the Torah talks about, on page 1008, Perek Yud Gimel Pasuk Zayin. So the Torah talks over here, it's 5 lines down. Ki yisischa achicha ben imecha uven vitcha ubitcha vincha ubitcha eches chekech recha asher kenavshcha b'seiser lemor. You are incited. They're inciting you, and they say to you, Nilcha v'navda Eloi mechem. Let's go worship other gods. Asher lo yadata tava v'secha. And you reject it. You don't even listen to the guy. You manage to avoid the temptation. You go and you report. The Torah then says, look at Pasuk Yud. Look at Pasuk Yud. Pasuk Tes. Lo so velo, don't obey him, velo sishmaela, velo sochos ein chalav, don't have any compassion, velo sachmo, velo sachasav, don't have mercy on him, and don't cover it over. Rather, what? Ki harog targenu. You must execute him. Yod chatiyah bo barishon alami, so you execute him, the witnesses, the yad kol am b'achrona. Now, who are we talking about over here? We're talking about a guy who tried to incite others to worship idols. The pusher is always worse. The dealer is always worse than the users. The cops, they always go after the dealers. The dealers and the pushers. The users are users, but you want to get the dealer. The dealer is the cancer. This guy is a cancer. He's trying to incite other people to worship idols. And it's the only time in Torah, if you look at the Mishnayos in Sanhedrin, the Gemara in Sanhedrin, it's the only time in Torah that entrapment is permissible. Guy comes over to you and says, hey, let's go worship some idols. So what you do is, you get 2 witnesses to hide, then you call the guy over and say, what did you want to do? I forgot, what did you tell me you wanted to do? Yeah, I got some great idols. Now, and the witnesses hear him, they jump out, without any warning. Normally you got to warn a guy before an Avera. No warning, they bring him to Beis Din, they testify against him, nobody tries to defend him, and he's executed. Why? Because he's a cancer. He's the dealer, he's the pusher. That's what it's the only time entrapment is permissible in halacha. Why did I want to get to this? I don't think any of you are entrappers. You're not idol worship pushers, dealers, or victims. So why do I want to tell you this? Because there's a concept that mida tova meruba mimidas puranos. Good is paid at the reward for good deeds that we do is paid at a higher rate than the rewards of bad. It's like in the workforce, if you work overtime, you get time and a half for overtime. You work regular hours, you get your regular salary, you get a time and a half for overtime. In halacha, in Torah, you get paid at a higher rate for doing good mitzvahs than we get punishments for averas. And according to one opinion, 500 times as much. This guy, did he succeed in what he tried to do? He tried to do negative. Did he succeed? He didn't even succeed. You rejected his offering and you brought him to Beis Din. He didn't even succeed. And yet he's executed. So imagine your reward if you try to influence somebody properly for something good. When you try to influence somebody, hey, let's go to shul, let's go learn. Let's be good, let's be careful not to speak Lashon Hara. Now you're going to get rewarded even if the guy doesn't do it. Because if he tried and he failed, yet he's executed, so even if you tried, if you succeed, it's even better. But if you failed, you still get that reward. And by the way, the Alter Mikelm says that's even if it's yourself. If you sit down and learn some Musar to try to improve yourself, I now get rewarded as if I was an inciter trying to incite somebody to worship idols. And that's even if the Musar didn't work, or if you think it didn't work. By the way, it always works. It always has an effect. You think it didn't have an effect, and then you get a reward 500 times in proportion to what the punishment would be for the same action. So if a person's going to eat treif, he gets a punishment. If you're tempted to eat treif and you don't, you're rewarded 500 times the amount that you would have gotten the punishment for eating it. All right.
You promised us a line about Parnasa.
A line about Parnasa?
Yeah, yesterday. Before finishing, you said like.
No, that was just to get you guys to pay attention. I once saw a sign. I was in youth group, and I saw a sign on the wall, and there's like a bulletin board with announcements. It says free. It says easy money. So I go over and look. It said underneath it says, "Hi." I knew this would get you to read the sign. Then it says something about anybody who wants to volunteer to help clean up, the blah blah blah, one of those. That's always whenever I want to sting anybody. I was once in a shul. I spoke this true story. I was in America last year, 2 years ago. So we had a bunch of visiting rabbis. So they arranged for each rabbi to speak in a shul Friday night to speak in a shul. Okay, so normally, if you're coming in from out of town and you're speaking in a shul, so they give you, a little bit more time than they normally do. This is between Mincha and Marav, by Kabbalah Shabbos. So I walk into the shul, and they had told me in Israel that I was supposed to speak for 20 minutes, which is long for shuls in America. And I walk in, and the rabbi says, I said to the rabbi, just to double check, how long you want me to speak for? He says, about 8 minutes. At 8 minutes, I can't even say, you could say your Shabbos in 8 minutes, okay. He said, well, you could go, if you need to go 10, 11 minutes is okay too. I said, okay. And I just felt, I wasn't personally insulted, because I wasn't personally insulted, but I felt that if somebody's already come 6,000 miles, you tell the members of your shul, maybe let them, maybe you could handle it for another couple of minutes. And he just sat on a plane for 12 hours. You should be able to sit for another 3 or 4 minutes. So I didn't make an issue out of it. When they tell me to, I stop when they want me to stop. And so I said what I had to say. And then as I left, I said to the shul, listen, I wanted to speak about how to make a lot of money very quickly and easily, but I'm out of time, so sorry, I can't. That was my. Yeah, they loved it. Then I spoke to the rabbi. I was a young guy. I spoke to the rabbi. I said, listen, that's not how you run things. It's just not right. That's so privately. I said, think a little bit. Yeah, people came in. This whole organization came in. That's what you do. You allot 8 minutes. And it was just lack of proper protocol. That's all. I understand where he's coming from, because he's got his kehillah. They'll throw stones at you if chas v'shalom you go a little too long. That sort of thing. All right, call it, where are you? Call it entrapment.